Oh yeah, that any there dela ngandela debmo tokuchet yongare teni ne hwemzut kan del ke teni tuji che yukuyot teni kyaran so cha chama terande persona tuji che jwa teyin teni ngi tip tria de tok tambore teni Europe la yung ate ang tok yin teni ndri ke hwemzut kan ta hirp jang wan din la tebyo to chuk tam cheti nga zo mer tham ji hirp kande yin shapa kande yin hipsha kande yo te som son khyo pa dedi ke hirp ke rangshin chan chigrin din cha chang tep jang ka kang do di nang ni teni terang keran son nyam to hipsha ya ke kor ko shon son atela ne pe ga pro che son ga pro yo
So Rinpoche said I'm traveling at this time to speak about the topic and introduce my new book. And I wish to begin by thanking Watkins Bookstore and everyone here for hosting me. This is my the first time I've authored a book, a published book, and it also happens to be the first time I'm in the UK and the first time I'm traveling to Europe. And so I'm very happy to be here this evening and to see all of you here. Thank you for coming. I'm particularly happy to be in this bookstore. And because all of these books that are surrounding us are books based on knowledge and the authors sharing their knowledge with us. And so it symbolizes the cultivation of our human knowledge and understanding and experience, and so I'm particularly happy to be here amongst all of these books this evening and with all of you.
Yeah. Oh, teni ta karela kundo zena. Tani tep ko mang de la te toni ngoto chi tambo shek yin teni indi nang la kare yore ze te zu jo sha kare re ze ti thola man ro yin teni tong nga chu power of mind ze te ngi te ko ma tak yore ti no ni when a sem ki nur top ze na nga chu sem ze te kare re ze te nopsho ko mer ko samlo tang tang yin na tang na sem ko ko la nga chu ngma ni kyang lo tong chok mang pu kong ro ni kyang sem ze te 가리인 가수 담배 피해자니 하고 차려 받아오래 디프셔나 샘지바데 코랑가 나좀 산짓 하고 가르침보래 샘제한테 코랑 무보 녹화와지 그래서 the thing 코랑 녹화와지 코랑 산짓 용간 코랑 셸리 용간 드리지 그래 당 아주 무보 건이나 코랑 공오 당 산짓 그거니 셸리 기거니 직샤나 하고 그래 아주 샘기 오제한테 샘 코랑 살바래 Tangbore, then he illuminating down.
Deeper there?
Or did it our ass? Oh, yeah.
The Kinupchok wants a sem there, don't of Mambo and about some the Sharchok.
Shows a mass only.
Sharchok.
No shola yo mare la vien
Nupchola yo mare.
Not so in the cashola, don't come up on your realize.
So how I'd like to speak this evening is begin by speaking about the title of my book, which then kind of conveys the entire meaning and topic about what is expressed there, and then go into some specific details. And so the title of the book is The Power of Mind. And this begs the question for us, what is the mind? And what is the power of our mind? And so in the West, the knowledge, the emphasis of learning is more based and has been focused primarily on external things, whereas in the East we have a history where the primary emphasis and what we learn about kind of at the core of our knowledge and so forth is the mind itself. And the mind itself, this is one of the most important factors that determines our experience that we need to learn about as a kind of crucial topic of knowledge. And so the mind, it has a defining characteristics, it has a definition that defines it separately from everything else in the universe. It has both a specific definition and a function. Just as everything in the universe, we can define it. It has characteristics through which we define it, and then it has its function or how it affects or its role is within our experience. And so similarly, we want to gain that kind of clarity about our mind. And so what is our mind if we define it? We can define the mind as being conscious or clear and aware. Also?
어때리 샘 공오데 데리 드니 디 conscious aware that eliminating 다오데 강라양 우보 강라양 요 말에 거기나 잠비 우보 사 취메 롱라서 바 강당야 만디위 코랑 그 토모만 비 산니 땅오데 셰리 가레레제나네 사르정 릭파 시파테 롱크 냠뇽 가레 명고 하고요레 드니 젠티 우보 강이나 히툼 칸거 코랑고 샘직래 아주 어떤이 지라 샘급 셰리제 키오레 딩오니 삼로 땅나양 회나 디 북대 저 있나요 오 드닝 니 북 니 능라 information 망보 요레 삼칸 요 말 콘소 가레 키키옴 잠바 가레 ngan디 농흔둑 북디 ngan디 농흔둑 삼야양 요 말에 얘는 아주 샘라테 요레 드리 무보 직장 요만 더 샘당 샘 마인 비캬버테스 내가 저 차창라 요레 드니 레스 머남라 더 드로남라 yeah.
So our mind is in essence a conscious, a kind of a clear consciousness, and no other phenomena, no other thing in the universe has this attribute. And so it's conscious, and its function is that it is aware in the sense that it knows. For example, it is self-aware. Our mind is able to know itself, and then it is aware of others in that it is able to know others. And so our mind's way of functioning, how our conscious mind functions, is that it is able to know any knowable object, other and also itself. And so no other thing in the universe has this attribute, which is why it's the single defining attribute of the mind. For example, a book, then, which is filled with information, does not think I have lots of information in me, nor does it think someone is reading me. Every other phenomena, meaning any other thing that we look at, any material matter that we examine, be it made of earth, water, wind, fire, or other, then that does not have the conscious clarity and awareness that mind has. It is not able to know itself, nor is it able to know other objects. And so this is the function of our mind. And it's important to begin with that understanding because all of us possess a mind. And so we are all, each and every one of us, mind owners, so to speak. Ourselves as human beings, as well as other living beings such as animals and so forth. We all have mind, hence the Tibetan term sentient being, meaning having consciousness or having mind. Also?
테니 다 데르타우 샘도 하정 그 가르침보 가서 직든지 감달라 쪼데 샘트레스 가서 무직라 있는 누동 넉동 옙 섬미오레 테니 무법 실록골 무법 마보지기오레 옛나양 탐책 기능이 경 가서 샘실납 삼로 떠나 샘제한테 희와데 하리비 가르침보레스 테니 gemsen 가리리 제나네 대화던 둥을 요또 쪽 탐체 샘기 대화던 둥을 제한테 가서 샘기 나니 둥을 지글이 탈고나요 샘니 탈고 그 둥을 지 샘그 둥을이랑 샘그 조케요리 대비진도 샘집 대화양 샘집 조개요래 샘집 대화 제경이 어땠다 그래지.
Of all the things in the universe that are important for us to know, the most important factor is to understand our own mind. Because our mind is the single most important factor in determining our experience. It's the principal factor that determines our experience. And so our experience is composed of body, speech, and mind, and then of course all other phenomena and whatever they're composed of and so forth, but of all knowable things that we could understand and learn, the one that determines, is the primary determining factor in any given experience, is our mind. Nothing else has so much power to affect any given moment of our experience than our mind. And this is because mind's happiness is the mind, and mind's suffering is the mental well-being, or happiness, the kind of catch-all phrase for joy, well-being, pleasure, and so forth. We'll call it happiness. And if we want to, then that is actually created by the mind. And also mental suffering, all of our unhappiness and lack of joy and so forth, is also then, when we want, if we look at wanting to be free from that, then it is the mind that is able to free us from that. Also?
대니 샘기 누르톱제데 다카리레 제나네 토모마인 비샘기 누르톱데 나투스 대화제데 샘라 톱고 그요레 둥얼리 타르고 그요나 샘 둥얼리 타르고레 둥얼리 쫄고레 옛나양 데스타고 토퍼르셰 파텔라네 둥얼 팜샤 팜 파당 톱시 대화 톱이야데 샘그 둥얼 탐체 둥얼 딴디 자르와당 대화 문이 톱이야데 타르투피 대화 톱이야데 강라르클리 오레제나 아주 샘라르클리 오레세 데리 잔비 후보 강게 있나요 니급 그 대화 뇽뇽 직 톱쇼코레 데니 니급 그 둥얼 뇽뇽 직 세탑 그랩실로 후보 강가 있나요 데니 딴또 둥얼리 타르로와당 대화 타르투파 토야데 샘막도 그 강경 쳇도 그요 말 디입시나 샘기 누르톱 제야데 데 샘광 토모만 비 누르톱 디오레세 어데니
So when we talk about the power of our mind, that the power of our mind that no other thing in the universe has for us, is that the mind, when it comes to our pursuit of happiness and our wish to find freedom from suffering, the process of eliminating suffering and cultivating happiness, then it is the mind that we use to find freedom from suffering, and the mind that we use to cultivate happiness. Both happiness and suffering are dependent upon our mind, and it is only our mind that can give us that can give us the happiness which we wish for and free us from the suffering that we do not want. No other thing in the universe has the power to give us that. There are, to a minimal extent, meaning conditionally or temporarily, certain conditions can help give us temporary moments of conditional pleasure or well-being. And likewise, the temporary conditions might have the power to remove or get rid of a certain degree of suffering, but it is conditional and very limited. And so there is no single object in the universe that has the power to give us a full and complete happiness and freedom from suffering other than our mind. And so since our mind has that capacity, then we say that is the power of our mind, and it's the special or unique feature that only our mind has. That it only is what can give us what we're actually looking for. Also?
Teni semki nurtop ko korde kandipshini semki nubateri chig yopate ngonto kyurgu khdu kyur thupndu zena ti tap chigla tengu yore tapte ngindi jungknala shadi yopate korang leo den yore zo den yore yinang dinang ke leo ni pate zo ngomate leo ni pate ta zo ngomate tere teni leo ni pati nang la kare yore zena na tanga chu shirtang ke dewa kani top go khundu dungar kani ser go khundu ko himkan ke hirap yo korwa hirap te shadi ore timala chok tu kurbi hirap ze o timala tere spring wisdom se de teore teni hirap chik pukun dikhiyo marwa nga chu kare semnala tanga chu semnan gerwa chik tango go yo na gerwa tang kare go khundu kandi shi go khundu phayin dang nuba kane du himkan ke hirap te nga chu teni teore teni hakoni karlap gore zena teni hibjinto nyamsu nyongo kyore hini nyamsu nyongo kyore di sherna nga chu hirap dem shotu kyupi hirap de dinang yore di hirap ko rokpala kare yore zena ne ta nyangje chembo jibada de yore ta nga chu njikten ga kamla kar shehu de ndeni kare es ni yondan ni de nyangje chembo yondan ta hirap chembo yondan zeya de nga chu machi ki gilla yogwa de semnang de kare zinan di tabga ni lakte ni ne nga chu kare top yore zena te teni nguni dungarni sera ko dewa tobia de semnang ka yondan shongwan de ni la rakli yore se nga chu semlap shirtang ge yeni yondan yore tangbo ni ni kyang sem korang jibde karang jin chan tangbo regional se korwa tangbo ni ni kyang yondan dang chi pa dungar dang jarwa jibde dang chi pa nga chu sem karang jin te de ken jon tamche to lor wa sem ke khwana nam to ngam ba dang nyumo ba dang jingna dang sem la so pa lor wa tamche rajong re oya tip sherna teni terta uyonte yeni yopate tap ki gonita sat ko kore nga chu semla gugu yonan di zowo ni de ni tap nyang je chembo to khirp chembo ni kares yeah. I don't know, I don't understand the, how do I say, England people, personality, or but, a little bit, I don't understand. I have no experience so much. The concepts, your concepts. I know very much American concepts. So which one is a little bit funny or which one is not, I have no idea. America, I know how to say it.
So he's just very keeping it joke-free for now. Just in case.
Jokes are good.
So when we begin to see the power of our mind and its impact and influence on our experience, then that leads us to the exploration of how do we sort of make evident that innate potential, the power of our mind. How do we access that within ourselves? We need tools. And so the book, The Power of Mind, is a series of trainings called mind training, in which we're working with our mind then to change our mind and our experience. And the second chapter in particular is kind of the focal point of the main tools for working with our mind in the process of cultivating happiness from within ourselves, mentally creating an environment of well-being, while at the same time eliminating suffering within ourselves and decreasing and reducing our suffering. And so the first thing that we need is the knowledge that understands what is it that we want to cultivate that creates greater well-being, and what is it then that creates suffering, and how do we find freedom from that. And so we cultivate the knowledge is what sees what will do that, sees our kind of mind's operating system and how to work with that. And that knowledge is what we call supreme wisdom, that understands the true nature of the way things are and how they operate, and then through logic and reasoning. And then once we understand that, we have that wisdom or knowledge, then the process of how to implement that in order to make it our personal experience. And as it becomes our experience, then our experience changes and is transformed. And so how do we change our mind, and what are the beneficial effects or qualities that come through that process? That's the cultivation of wisdom. And so the process is of both cultivating an intellectual knowledge of understanding and then implementing that directly into our experience, so that then we have an experiential knowledge or direct experience of that. And so then the mind training is cultivated through the development of the cultivation of a wisdom or profound knowledge, which is then accompanied by great compassion. And so these two qualities of great compassion and profound wisdom transform our experience, are our tools for reducing and eliminating suffering, while also then cultivating the causes and means for greater and greater states of well-being, the positive qualities then within ourselves. And the reason that this is possible is because of the very nature of mind itself. We could say timeless nature is originally a state of peace and well-being. These qualities already exist within us, are already the natural state of our mind, are our mind's nature. And all of the flaws, the mental afflictions and negative aspects of our mental experience and so forth, these are temporary. Fear, anxiety, anger, and all of the other negative thoughts that we have, these thoughts we can be free from, because these are not the natural state, they are not the nature of our mind. And so by using methods then of wisdom and compassion amongst many others, we're accessing the natural resource of positive qualities that are already present innately within our mind as we remove the negative factors, the negative thoughts and emotions. And so that's what this teaching is about. These two tools of profound wisdom and compassion, and the implementation of using these within our mind to bring about positive change. Also?
어때? 되니 당이 레오니 박 선바당들니 디통네 직샤케인 김선 강인제나 당아투 차성 휘컴고마리 히릅가리레 녀르제가리레 잠모 코랑테초 가네다고 까침보인 당티 파윤당 누바 차성 휘거는 아주 두츠디오 마레 데링이 ngotu chikse kyore tep ko tena kar che hu deng di sambate leu sambi nang la keng lam khse or ngi te tong de ni kerang so si pya na tang sang pe kar chen bo re du deni kar re zena nga chor nyingmi tu la le bo re tang sang ta shir tang ke deni zam bu long la na zhe sa che me long kum yong jin chik pa chen bo yong ko yo pi dur kap tang de jin de mer nam ke na sem nang nyumo pa ta hali ba ma bo Jigme Phuntsog Rinpoche Chagdud Tulku 다 덕은전당 덕진전당等하장 그만 보여 비둘까베 대비신도는 대니 지금 잠불랑 그만 주고당 대비신도 아주 지금 지글라 헤딩 첨보 시키요 바당 콩조 첨보당 다 머가만 보지 용거요래 대 당상 아주 눈을 채우되 샘 코랑 거 깡을 떨어져 거요래 샘급 삼로 방탕으로 봐. 내 소차상 남 똑래. nga tsu rang la chak nang tang rang la jig nang tang rang la semchir mang po zo ni nga tsu didi mang po chik chak yo re tang sang o te teni di chapter sambi nang lam kir phe tang chik yo re o ti kor ngi pyak ke zo te kerang zo te pan tok ti yong gre danda ni ngi te nyong chik pyak ke yen se
So once we have a basis with these tools, then the next step is the implementation of them, and particularly in the third chapter of the book, the focus is on carrying adversity onto the path, or transforming unwanted conditions. And this one is something that I would also particularly like to speak about here. Rinpoche said, of course, each of these qualities and points that I've mentioned I could go into in great detail, and we can talk about how they affect the mind and change our experience, their benefits and qualities and so forth. But in a short talk like this, I only have just enough time to give kind of a brief intro, and then the book itself is the detailed discussion and teaching on these. But I do want to briefly speak about the section on carrying adversity onto the path, which is the emphasis of this genre of teachings, because we find ourselves here in such a degenerate time, a time where we have a degeneration of the elements such as greater natural disasters and so forth, a time where as human beings our minds are particularly disturbed. We have so many more mental afflictions, so we're overwrought with so much fear and anxiety and anger and pride and selfishness and self-centeredness and really intense grasping and cherishing to ourselves. And internally we're so mentally afflicted, and then of course this expresses itself externally, where we have war and dispute and a lack of harmony and essentially a lot of hate and anger. And so we are kind of emphasizing that aspect of disliking things in our lives and about ourselves and in the world, and our mind is creating so much extra mental suffering. And so we are suffering the most from mentally created suffering, which is, when it boils down to it, a way of thinking. Our concepts are a way of thinking, and certain ways of thinking are ones that are more distressing and disturbing for us. And so then many of our problems are made because of our mind and our way of thinking. We're making all kinds of problems and issues for ourselves and for others. And so then how do we use these circumstances that we find ourselves in with such a challenging time and so many difficulties? How do we use those to transform them, to carry them onto the path? And so then the book both has an extensive discussion and teaching on how to do so, but also this evening I'd like to speak a little bit about that so that it can be of benefit to you. I think it will help everyone, even if we just have like a little idea of some of these methods that we have available to us for working with our mind. I think right now that's so important for everyone. Also, so in general, then I talk about like two approaches or two methods for this. The first method, then, when we encounter something that we dislike, is the first step is then don't hate the adverse condition. The thing that you don't like, stop hating it. That's the first thing. The second step, then, for working with our mind, are using the methods that I mentioned before, the two principal qualities of cultivating wisdom and great compassion. So that then that unwanted or unfavorable circumstance not only doesn't cause us harm, but we're actually benefited from it. And so I'll give you a couple examples here and speak just briefly about this. So then, first, in general, as ordinary beings, our mind is, so, it's often like contrary, and it doesn't like things. It doesn't like this person or these people or this situation or that thing or this food or that news or this is what this country or that country or this ethnicity or that kind of person and so forth. And so our mind is constantly habituating toward dislike. I don't like, I don't want. And we kind of hate on everything and on everyone. And so when I think about this, so I know, I know that people like jokes in general, so I'll try a Tibetan joke on you. And hopefully the translator will get it. So, okay, I'm going to try a Tibetan joke. Oh, yeah. So, like if you have a yak's horns, and then in a yak culture we will gather yak's horns and we'll try to put them in a bag, a sack. And so then not very many yak horns fit in a sack. And the reason why is because they're all slightly crooked. And so they don't like quite fit well together. And so then you can't really fit that many in a sack. And it ends up with a lot of empty spaces and it's just like not so like comfortable. They're not in harmony. They don't get along with each other, we could say. And so they don't fit in together nicely and smoothly. So then what we have a saying. Then sometimes the old people say, they'll give like younger people advice, they'll say, don't be like yak horns in a sack. This is the saying that they have. And so, like, what can we learn from that saying? So, like, then what they say is we should be like a flour in a sack, like ground flour.
No, not flour.
Shema? Sand. Sorry, I apologize. Sand in a sack.
Totally different things.
Totally different things. He doesn't let me get away with anything. Okay, sand. Okay, so, or like for example, like take water for instance. So water then fits in any vessel that you put it in, and it fills all the empty spaces and fits very fluidly and very kind of easily. It fits nicely. But then not yak horns. Each one would be like poking at the other, and there would be all this extra space. It'd be quite uncomfortable. So what I'm saying is that we need to try, especially these days, not to be like yak horns in a sack. Not to live like that, but really to look at how can we kind of get along, how can we fit together, all of us on earth. And that's something that takes study. We need to learn how to be with others. And what does that really mean? It's really dependent upon our mind, our mind's way of thinking. Is going, if there is nothing that cannot fit in our mind, and if our mind is okay, then whatever it is okay, and everything can fit in our mind. It can encompass everything. What's not okay is when the mind thinks this is not okay. Our mind is the issue maker. It's the one making issues, and that means it's our mind's way of thinking. Not that it can't fit and stuff, but then we think, I don't like this, I don't like that, oh, I don't like this. And then as much as we dislike, then is how much we suffer. They are directly equivalent. So the more that we habituate to disliking things, the more problems, the more issues that we have. And so then eventually we constantly dislike, and then pretty soon we always find something that's dislikable, and everything in the world is like an adversary to us, becomes our enemy. Is not okay for us, doesn't fit for us, isn't right for me, isn't okay with me, isn't comfortable for me. And so then we suffer over everything, because we're always seeing what we're not happy about. I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like that. And so then we just dislike constantly, and each dislike is a discomfort, is an unhappiness that we shall experience. As sensitive, meaning easy to dislike and get upset as we are,
thin-skinned
is as thin-skinned as we are is how much we suffer. And so our sort of ability to be kind of harmed is directly equivalent to how much we dislike. And so basically our dislike is what makes us vulnerable to harm.
Okay.
Right? It's a way of thinking too, right? So like if we make ourselves intolerant and we constantly think, I don't like this, I don't like this, down to the smallest little thing, then even the tiniest little thing is not okay for us. We're going to be unhappy about it. And so then we do that every day, every hour, every month, every year, and we're just accumulating basically a habit of dislike. And our mind is just creating the habituation to constantly seeing things it dislikes. This is logic. This corresponds to the operating system of our mind. And as much as we dislike is how much we will suffer in this life. So let me tell you one more thing about this. The disliking things is the food for your suffering. It's like it feeds suffering. And so as much as you dislike is how much you suffer. So then what do we need? We need to starve suffering. We need to stop feeding suffering. It's food. We have to cut off its source. So then stop hating. That's what I'm saying. We have to stop the hate. The dislike. And how do we do that? By changing our mind's way of thinking. And how does that happen? So then what do we need for that? Okay. You can see, okay, yeah, I have lots more problems the more I dislike and as sensitive as I am, overly sensitive as I am. So we recognize that and we think, okay, well, what do I need? Then my mind then needs to have greater sort of, we could say, tolerance, which means the ability, the forbearance of not being easily disturbed, easily upset. And basically that also entails having a kind of a courage to be okay. Because no matter where you go in the world, there will never be a place where there are no unfavorable conditions, where there's nothing you don't like. But whether those conditions can actually harm you or not is dependent entirely upon your own mind. It's a way, they're dependent upon a way of thinking. And so then, no matter what adverse condition, even just we start with the little ones, like the tiny little irritants. When it happens and you think, I don't like that, or that kind of like attitude of dislike, just slight aversion at that moment, then to remember, oh, this is why I have unhappiness. I can be okay. And think, no matter, the more I hate on these kinds of things and dislike them, then it not only does it not harm me, but it's also of no benefit. It doesn't change, the dislike alone doesn't change the circumstance. And it creates more suffering. And so recognizing that, then we can make a commitment at that moment. And we should do that every day in many small conditions and in many circumstances. Think, I can be okay, which means not be disturbed or upset, that you are able to be okay. Do you guys understand that? Before, if we let our mind just run amok, then it's like, it's not okay all the time. I'm not okay. And we're telling ourselves, and we're habituating to being unhappy. I'm not okay, I'm not okay, I'm not okay with this. Now you change that. It takes a courage to think, I can actually be okay. I don't have to suffer over this. I can be okay. And in being okay, I'll build a habit for okayness, and less things will disturb me.
I know you guys have some questions about that. I already know. Because I'm teasing sometimes people America. Recently I learned this.
Probably the whole Western hemisphere. Then the way that we're raised, our way of thinking here, is with the 5 W's. Do you have that expression? What, why, when, where, or is that who? And then and then there's H. How? That so we were raised with that kind of way of thinking. That's a very Western kind of way of thinking.
Okay.
So, for example, in the East, like in Tibet, my own personal experience, we were brought up in a very simple household. And you know, if our parents say don't eat that, then we just say okay. That's it.
Why?
Perhaps that's something that you have here as well, where you start with the why. You don't just do it because someone tells you to. And so, like that, just different way of thinking. So when we're raised with a huge emphasis on the 5 W's from a very young age, then we tend to have lots of questions.
I know that. So we leave a
So
question.
don't worry, Rinpoche said I will leave some time for questions as well. But that's the first point for changing suffering, adverse conditions, is to stop hating, stop disliking. So then we have a second point. The second, then okay, so we stop hating and we really cultivate the courage to be okay. I can be okay, I can tolerate it, I don't have to be distracted. And just like let that settle with your mind, I'm okay. And you give it a little space. Then the next step is then you can apply qualities. The first one is the application of wisdom to that circumstance. So whatever it is, so that you have fear about it, you get angry over it, then the wisdom, then you don't focus on the reason of why you're upset, but rather than the wisdom looks at the essence of, for example, anger, whatever negative mental state or thought, emotion is arising. And so rather than focusing on the reason, it turns and it looks at the essence of anger, for example. And tries to seek it out. Where is it? What is it? Like, just gently observes the emotion, the mental affliction. Looking directly at it. How is it? What is it like? And in that simple act of observance, and just kind of sitting with that, then you kind of digest that. How is it? What is it like? And then it will begin to kind of gentle and sometimes just kind of fall away. And that happens when you search for the essence of the emotion with wisdom. Or you could do that if you have worry or fear or anxiety. Then rather than thinking about the reason of it, you focus on the essence of it itself. Like whatever emotion it is, you look toward itself, toward its own essence, and just kind of rest with that. That's one of many practices of wisdom. So the looker, the seeker of the essence or the nature of the emotion is the wisdom. It's looking at what is the nature of that mental affliction that is arising in this moment. As it arises, it's looking towards itself. What is the nature of fear? And the seeker of that is called wisdom. And we call that supreme wisdom. And that's directly looking at it in an experiential way. You want to experience its nature through that looking. There are many like lines of reasoning that you can use to logically examine the emotion, but I'm giving you an experiential wisdom approach here, a different method, and very simple that we can give in a few, sentences. Simply to look at the essence or the nature of the emotion as it arises, and just gently observe and stick with that. You don't have to find anything, okay? That's not the goal. You don't need to find something. Just look.
Just look.
So just that observance alone, and you want to build a habit of that. So generally our mind's way of thinking is like we get angry and then we focus on the object, the reason why we're angry. And then we focus on that and focus on that and we get angrier and angrier. That's usually what we do. And we don't look at the essence of anger itself. Of the emotional itself. Okay, so now I have another joke.
Okay, I'm going to give you a joke. And what else? Okay.
Uh-oh.
So, then when I had to, that it's very, very Tibetan jokes. Okay, you need to know Tibetan dogs. Okay, first.
Oh no.
Tibetan dogs are not so friendly. Okay, not like the
They're not
Western
pets.
countries dogs. Okay, they are not that nice.
Not house pets.
Okay, not house pets. And then they really biting you all the time. They have almost 99%. Because I don't know why we may be trained that way. So they are pretty mean, okay? You need to know that first.
Pretty mean.
You're pretty mean. You need to know that first. Okay, so then, 다카레제나.
Okay.
Then you have to 성게라 도파와 나오신 거 그래. 칠라 도파와 나오신 맙시세요.
We need to be like a lion that has a stone thrown at it, not like a dog that has a stone thrown at it.
뜻에나 가르제
So
거르제나. 드니 노노 드니 갈래라와. 가르제 거르제나는 성게라 도파나.
When you throw a stone at a lion,
도지라 욕만.
the lion doesn't chase after the stone.
도 펑큰 거 통.
It chases after the stone thrower.
가르제나 영어 캠 펑그만.
Because then another stone won't be thrown.
도와. 도 펑그 오래
Yeah,
드니.
I got it, I promise.
드니 큐라 도 펑나.
If you throw a rock at a dog, at least in Tibet, the dogs will chase after you and bite you. And, you know, sometimes many of them will attack you.
Oh yeah,
And so
I got many times.
you have to carry rocks.
Attack me and bite me many times. I got that when I was young because I was naughty, so I was naughty boy. So then we
throw rocks at them to keep them from attacking us, and they typically run after the rock. And so then you can throw another one. Because, you know, they're going to chase after the rocks, so that keeps you safe. But that's just an analogy.
Okay.
So the meaning, then, to be like a lion that has a stone thrown at it, no matter what occurs, whether you become angry, worried, have anxiety, fear, or whatever mental affliction you have, then you want to, don't chase after it. It's like the thoughts that arise with the emotions are like rocks. And so then don't chase after the objects. Don't keep fixating on the reason. Look at the thrower of the rocks. Then look at the essence of the mind.
Okay,
The mind that is that emotion. Look at the essence of that. So what I'm saying is that usually then we have fear, anxiety, and whatever, and then we focus on the object, the reason for it, and we go there again and again and again, and we keep chasing after it over and over, and it's just one after another, and it just keeps coming. And we keep having more fear and anxiety and anger and whatever mental affliction it is that we're suffering over. And so then the brief analogy for wisdom and carrying adversity is to look at the essence of the mind at that moment. Okay, then the second method that we can use is great compassion. And so then, for example, if you first, for instance, say you have fear about something, then you don't focus on the reason or object, you use the wisdom. Then the next step after that is then to remember how many other living beings are suffering over fear in the world now, and how each and every other human and living being wants to experience happiness and doesn't want to suffer just as we do. They want the same thing as us. There's no difference. And so they too, whatever they're, you know, when we have, like, say, this moment of fear, we recognize that all of these other living beings also have fear and are suffering over fear just as we are. And we can have the thought may everyone be free from the suffering of fear. And so then that's compassion. Compassion is a wish that another be free from suffering. And it's a very important quality that we need to cultivate. And so then in that moment, then we cultivate this compassion, and that changes our experience. And we can say that now the unfavorable condition has become a positive condition for us. So carrying adversity onto the path means if we use skillful methods, good tools, then adverse conditions, disturbing emotions, whatever it is, then everything in our life, we can, if we use skillful methods, we can transform into positive circumstances, we can befriend it.